On the surface, Hollywood looks like a beautiful, happy place where people's dreams of fame and fortune come true. However, when you scratch below the surface of Hollywood's perfect veneer, you'll find a lot, especially a lot of stars, aren't quite who they portray themselves to be. So today, we're pulling back the curtain to see what some stars are truly like and discussing what really happens behind the scenes of 4 very popular shows. We'll be covering the wild behavior of many of the stars of Dexter, Shameless, The L Word, and Yellowjackets, for better and for worse. We'll be discussing the enormous co-star feuds that were so toxic, ultimatums were issued that caused certain popular cast members to exit their series forever. On top of the many cast member stories you'll never have heard about before, we'll also be covering secrets from the sets of these 4 shows that have never been discussed publicly. Most of the information we'll be breaking down today has been sourced directly from cast and crew who worked on Dexter, Yellowjackets, Shameless, and The L Word, and individuals who worked for the network all 4 shows air on Showtime. For that reason, I guarantee that even the biggest fans of these 4 shows will hear shocking and surprising information they've never heard before, including the answers to questions that fans of these series have been asking about for years. And on top of all of that, we'll be also divulging some of Showtime's most guarded information in regards to Dexter, Yellowjackets, The L Word, and Shameless that they've tried to keep buried under an avalanche of NDAs. So sit back, relax, grab a drink, maybe an alcoholic one for this one, and a snack, and let's dive in to the behind-the-scenes drama, lies, feuds, and secrets of Dexter, Shameless, The L Word, Yellowjackets, and the Showtime network. We're going to kick off by covering Shameless, the longest running series on Showtime. Shameless became a massively successful show for Showtime from its debut in 2011. Shameless's 11 seasons ran from 2011 to April 2021, and the show is a remake adaptation of the long-running British show of the same name by Paul Abbott. Shameless's pilot was actually previewed during the season 5 finale of Dexter, and when the pilot aired a few weeks later in January 2011, it became Showtime's highest rated debut episode. Shameless went on to dominate in the ratings for Showtime, pulling in more viewers year after year, peaking at just shy of 2 million viewers every year for season 4, which for Showtime is a lot. The show did slip slightly in season 5 through season 9 and then fell off a cliff for the final 2 seasons, which we'll discuss why in just a second. Originally, in January 2009, John Wells struck a deal to develop the American version of Shameless, but originally this deal was struck with HBO, and only in April 2009 did the show move from HBO to Showtime. With the exception of The Office, British adaptations into US series haven't always gone down very well. As a half Brit, half American who's lived half my life in Britain and Ireland and half in the US, I feel like I'm uniquely qualified to discuss these intricacies, but I think with Shameless and The Office, both of those shows are the rare instances where the US versions have surpassed the British originals. But I know a lot of people don't feel that way. Probably a lot of British people don't like the American versions and vice versa, but I think Shameless and The Office, I do prefer the American versions, but again, I'm sure some people will have comments in the comments about that. For the US adaptation, the very general premise of the show remained the same. That was following a family who lived in poverty called the Gallagher family, and most of the kids had to get by themselves, dealing with absent parents who struggled with substance abuse and a plethora of other issues. The Gallagher family, that being the core characters of the show, remained the same as the UK version, but when it came to storylines and where the show went and other characters, The US and the UK version were very different shows. The US show starred Emmy Rossum as Fiona Gallagher, who was the lead character, the eldest daughter, and the sibling who had to step in to raise all of her other siblings because her parents were very absent. And her father was played by William H. Macy, playing the character of Frank Gallagher. The next eldest Gallagher was Philip Lip Gallagher, played by Jeremy Allen White. Then there was Cameron Monaghan, who played Ian Gallagher, followed by Ethan Kokoski, who played Carl Gallagher, Emma Kenny, who played Debbie Gallagher, and there was a fifth Gallagher, Liam Gallagher, who the actor was played by various different child actors as the child aged throughout the 11 years that the show was on. The rest of the non-Gallagher main cast was made up of Shanola Hamilton, who played V, Fiona's best friend, and the Gallagher's next door neighbor. Her husband, Kevin Ball, was played by Steve Howie. Justin Chatwick played Fiona's love interest, Steve/Jimmy, in the first 3 seasons and also had some guest appearances in 4 and 5. Joan Cusack as Sheila Jackson, who was in the first 5 seasons, and then Noel Fisher, who played Mickey Milkovich, who was a recurring cast member through seasons 1 and 2. He went on to be a main cast member seasons 3 through 5 and 10 through 11, and also was a special guest star seasons 6, 7, and 9. The 2 lead actors of the show were undoubtedly William H. Macy and Emmy Rossum, especially in the earlier seasons of the show. As the seasons went on and the kid actors grew up, they took on bigger roles because kids like Emma Kenny and Ethan Kokoski were only 9 when they took on their lead roles in the show. When the show began, there was a big pay discrepancy between William H. Macy and Emmy Rossum, given that Macy was much more seasoned and established as an actor. A lot of people, when talking about the behind the scenes of Shameless, will cite this pay issue as one of the reasons for Emmy Rossum being allegedly very difficult to deal with behind the scenes. And while this pay issue did exist and was rectified later on the show, this, according to anyone that I've spoken to who worked on Shameless, wasn't really the main issue. It just was an issue at the same time because the vast majority of any of the problems behind the scenes on Shameless, according to multiple sources that I've spoken to, were all to do with Emmy Rossum. And there have also been actors from the show who've spoken out about this as well after the show finished airing. So before we get into the real behind the scenes antics, I just want to briefly explain where a lot of the information in this video is coming from, because yes, as usual, all the articles, videos, interviews are linked below in the sources like I do for all my videos. They're in the Google link that's in the pinned comment and the description box. But a lot of this video, most of the information is coming from crew or people who worked on all of these shows. And there are also a few actors that I've spoken to from Dexter, Shameless, and Yellowjackets. When it comes to the L Word, I'll explain a bit more about that when we talk about that show, because probably half of the information in the L Word section is coming from the source of me. So I'll explain more about that when we get to it. Of course, everyone who I've spoken to in this video, they don't want to be identified. I won't be disclosing any more about them other than they worked on the show, because giving out how long they worked on it or what job they had, it makes them identifiable. But please know that none of these people were someone who worked on the show for 2 days or was there for a day as a background actor. They all worked on these shows for years and years, and also everything has been backed up by someone else, unless I specifically say so. I wasn't just getting one person's word on something, and I will also be including positive stories and actors that come across very well to outweigh some of the really difficult cast members that we're going to talk about today. That being said, if there's an actor on one of these shows that you really, really, really like, I won't be upset if you turn back now. So in December 2016, it was reported that Emmy Rossum, after multiple seasons of being paid significantly less than William H. Macy, was requested that she be paid equally and compensated in future seasons to make up for the past discrepancies. The equal pay negotiations were very vocally supported by William H. Macy. There actually was a brief delay to the 8th season of the show while this was being worked out with Emmy Rossum and Warner Television through the negotiations. The dispute came to an end on December 14th that year when Rossum confirmed through Twitter that she would continue working on Shameless, with production of the 8th season to start the next May 2017. 2.5 years later, in August 2018, a month before the 9th season premiered, Emmy Rossum announced that she would be departing Shameless at the end of the 9th season. The character of Fiona was very much the heart of the show and undoubtedly the lead. So a lot of people were wondering what was going to happen. And you can see a difference in the show the last 2 seasons. Even if you just look at the ratings, they are drastically different the 10th and 11th season. Fiona never does return to the show. Apparently, there were very, very early stage plans to have her return for the series finale, but a lot of the time when you read stuff online, they'll say, oh, it was a lot to do with COVID. But according to a lot of the people I spoke to, they never even got to the stage of like negotiating how much they would pay her to return. And nobody really thought it was going to happen. It didn't really even get past the stage of, oh, wouldn't it kind of be cool, and like throwing things around in the writer's room, because an offer was never formally put forward. And they didn't even know if Emmy would come back, given that everything was going on with COVID and she was pregnant at the time too. And because of how things were when she was on the show. Originally, when they were putting together the 9th season, it never was the plan to have Fiona go out, and it wasn't the plan to continue the show without her. There actually was different plans for Fiona's character in the 9th season and if she would continue on with the show. There was originally plans for Fiona to explore her sexuality and develop a relationship with Nessa. That sort of storyline was twisted a little bit and given to Fiona's sister Debbie, played by Emma Kenny, instead. Also, it was always going to be the plan that the series would end with Frank Gallagher passing away. But originally, when they thought Emmy was going to be involved, or when they thought she was still going to be on the show, they were going to have Fiona play a big part in that story. So according to a lot of the people that I spoke to for this video, Emmy Rossum was allegedly very, very difficult to deal with behind the scenes. If you are familiar with Shameless, you'll know that the character of Fiona in the earlier seasons is very involved with all of her siblings. All of her scenes are with them, and she also has a very close relationship with her best friend V, played by Shanola Hamilton, who also lived next door to the Gallaghers. As the series went on, however, most of Fiona's storylines were taken away from dealing with her siblings and having a friendship with V, and according to a lot of people who worked on the show, this was purposely done because Emmy had a lot of issues with all of the other actors. Apparently, the only person that she respected and didn't scream at throughout the run of the show was William H. Macy. And there's also been other people from other sets who filmed next to Shameless saying that they frequently heard Emmy Rossum screaming at cast members and crew. And a lot of the crew members that I spoke to said that this wasn't just, oh, someone's having a bad day and they blow up. It was an ongoing thing that really affected a lot of people on the show. And a lot of crew members actually requested to change roles on the show or change jobs because they wanted to have as little interaction with Emmy as possible. I've always heard that Shanola Hamilton, who played V, was the cast member who was the absolute best. Everybody got on with, everybody saw her as like the kind of mother on set. And I also recently saw that she just got her doctorate, so freaking cool for her. But everybody just had nothing but nice things to say about her. And apparently that caused like a lot of issues with Emmy because Shanola would stand up for a lot of the other people. And so there was a lot of friction between them. And that's why over the last couple of seasons, V and Fiona, even though they're supposed to be best friends, they don't have like any interaction, and even their kind of falling out was written into the show. And a lot of people have said that a lot of the ways that the writers would sometimes deal with the Emmy issue was to put things into the show like this. Also, another person that developed a lot of issues with Emmy was Cameron Monaghan, who played Ian Gallagher, another person who I just heard unanimously good things about. And he left the show actually in season 9, and there were other points that he was going to leave the show, and he ended up doing that because of the issues allegedly with Emmy. He did end up leaving the show in season 9 because a lot of people, when you watch the show now, it looks like, oh, he maybe just went and filmed something for a while, or he wanted a break, because he comes back after like half season and then he's there for the rest of the show. But everyone I spoke to said that no, like he did leave the show. He had other work lined up. Like he's done a lot of the Star Wars video games. He's played a villain in the Gotham TV series, and he had other work lined up. But apparently whenever he was told that Emmy Rossum was going to leave the show, they were able to put together a deal to get him back. And one of his sort of non-negotiables to come back was that he wanted Noel Fisher, who played his love interest Mickey, to be brought back as well. Allegedly, Noel Fisher had also left the show over salary negotiations. He had been part of the main cast through seasons 3 through 5, but apparently he had not been paid at the same rate as the other main cast members. So he asked to make more money and be brought up in line with everyone else. They couldn't be brought to an agreement, so he ended up leaving the show, although it was on positive terms. And he ended up coming back for guest appearances and things. But apparently, whenever Cameron was wanting to come back, he said, I'll come back if you bring back Noel Fisher, because also their couple is like very, very popular with a lot of the Shameless fans, and they have like a big online following. So I think that he wanted to see that storyline through. And, you know, that's a nice thing, that if you know that your fans really like this relationship. So they ended up having more money to properly pay Noel Fisher to be in line with everyone else, because Emmy Rossum was leaving and she made up a big portion of the salary money for Shameless. Emma Kenny, who played Debbie Gallagher, Fiona's sister, ended up going on the Call Her Daddy podcast about 3 years ago, which was just a few months after the show ended up wrapping and airing the last series in 2021. And Emma spoke about the difficulties with Emmy on the set and said if Emmy was having a bad day, then everybody was going to have a bad day. And from a lot of the stories that I've heard, that certainly lines up. It just seems like it was nonstop issues with Emmy, whether it was between crew, between cast, and there even were allegedly little sort of power trippy moments where Emmy Rossum would try and just exert a lot of control over the set, and if there was someone that she didn't like or something happening that she didn't like, she would refuse to film and wouldn't carry on unless certain people were removed or certain people were sent somewhere else. And she just made things allegedly very difficult for everybody to deal with. And as I said, most of the other people that I've heard about on the show, especially Cameron Monaghan, Shanola Hamilton, and Jeremy Allen White, all three of those people I just heard unanimously really good things about. And it seems as though all of them are still very close. They seem to have like a really good friendship. And Emma Kenny, when she was on the Call Her Daddy podcast, said too, you know, we all see each other as very close. Like a lot of us grew up together and we still have kind of like a shameless family. But Emmy Rossum just isn't involved with that at all, because even in that interview, Emma Kenny, even though it was a few years ago, she said that she hadn't spoken to Emmy Rossum in years and they didn't really have any sort of interaction. I also heard a lot of good things about William H. Macy and that he was a very nice person to deal with. Everybody had a lot of respect for him. When it comes to William H. Macy, I actually heard an interesting story that I don't think is out there publicly, but also just know that this story came secondhand, as this was told by someone who knew William H. Macy quite well, and they told someone who worked with Felicity Huffman, who ended up telling me. There is some stuff that it seems to add up when you see what they've spoken about, Felicity Huffman and Bill Macy, in interviews and things, but I just want to disclose that this is where that story is from. And they've always projected their relationship as this very romantic, like perfect Hollywood relationship. But allegedly it did begin as an affair that eventually blew up Bill Macy's marriage. And he ended up walking away from his wife at the time. This was apparently in the 80s. And Felicity Huffman has talked about how they dated for 15 years before they got married in 1997. And apparently William Macy's ex-wife was Carla Santos Schamberg, and they were married until 1985. So if you do the math, it does seem like from 1982-ish to 1985, there was crossover with Bill Macy still being married and him dating Felicity Huffman. As for anything that's come out about Felicity and Bill in recent years, there hasn't really been much apart from the college admissions scandal, which, if anybody doesn't know about that, that was the big thing that was in the media. There's a Netflix series on it where Felicity Huffman was one of the main faces, the main person, I would say, that got most of the media attention anyway, was Lori Loughlin, who is Aunt Becky on Full House. And I think people especially focused on her because she is so well known, but she played like a very perfect character. And also Lori Loughlin's daughter that the whole admission scandal was done for, Olivia Jade, is an influencer and was quite well known when all of this came out too. Basically, not just celebrities, but very rich people were buying their kids' way into college, either in the way that Lori Loughlin did it, which was she ended up paying for her kids to get a spot on like the crew team or the soccer team, even though they didn't play soccer and had never rowed a boat in their life, but they were paying off these coaches at USC, was like one of the big universities, but it was at a bunch of like elite colleges, and they'd pay these coaches to give one of the spots to these rich kids. And as I said, there was different versions of this with Felicity Huffman. Her and Bill Macy's daughter, she ended up paying for the SAT version, which was the kid ended up taking the SAT, and unknowingly to the kid, they would hand in the Scantron and leave. And then the parents and this whole college scandal guy, Rick, had ended up paying the instructor to change some of the Scantron answers to the right answers so that it would boost the SAT or the ACT score of the kid. And there was all different versions of it and different colleges. But when all of this was exposed, there was loads of very wealthy people and several celebrities that were all caught up in it, and it became a big thing in the media because it just had all the makings of one of those true crime documentary scandals. And as I said, there is a Netflix series if you want to know more about it. One of the other most significant stories to come out of the cast of Shameless actually involves one of the L Word cast members too, and we are going to go on to the L Word next, so this is a fitting bit of Shameless lore to end with to transition into that. And this involves a lawsuit that was filed against Steve Howey, who played Kevin Ball on Shameless for the show's entire run. This lawsuit was also filed against him and his, at the time, wife, Sarah Shahi, who played Carmen on The L Word. Sarah's character was the love interest of Kate Moennig's character Shane. Kate Moennig is the cousin of Gwyneth Paltrow, and she's also the cousin of Rebecca Newman from WeWork. If you're a really, really OG viewer of the channel, you might remember in the very beginning of the channel, actually the first video on this channel, I used to talk about WeWork a lot when all of that controversy was going on. But if you don't watch The L Word, you might recognize Sarah Shahi from other projects that she's done. She was in the Black Adam movie. She was in that new Paradise series with James Marsden, and she was also in the Netflix series Sex Life. Sarah Shahi and Steve Howey were together for quite a while by Hollywood standards. They were together for 18 years total. They did begin dating when Sarah was on The L Word, but they were married for 11 years and they did end up divorcing in 2021. In 2012, a year after Shameless had started, they actually hired a nanny for their 3 kids, and the nanny worked for them for 3 years. And when the nanny quit working for them, she ended up filing a lawsuit against both of them. And when the lawsuit happened, this whole story came out in the media. The nanny's name is Sarah Alasiri, and she claimed a lot of things in the lawsuit against both of them. She said that Howey would berate her about following her Muslim customs in their presence, and that the verbal abuse got so bad that she felt she was unable to do her daily prayers in the house. She claimed the couple would make comments about her body and made a lot of sexual comments towards her. The nanny went on to say that Sarah Shahi would encourage her to get in shape so that her husband, Steve Howey, would be interested in her, and that the nanny and Steve could then run away together and Sarah Shahi could move on with her life. Alasiri then went on to claim that Sarah Shahi would go into extremely graphic details about an affair that she was having with an A-list actor, including showing her intimate pictures of the actor. She said that after 3 years, the abuse was too much to handle and she quit, and she ended up suing for damages of back wages, harassment, and wrongful termination. The lawsuit was filed in 2016, and then in 2017, Alasiri asked for it to be dismissed, but there was no details given publicly about a settlement or even the reason for the dismissal. Just over 2 years after the dismissal, Sarah Shahi and Steve Howey ended up filing for divorce, and Sarah Shahi around this time had her Netflix show Sex Life come out, and when that came out, she confirmed that she and the other lead from the show, Adam DeMoss, were actually seeing each other. In 2021, after the divorce from Howey was finalized, Sarah ended up doing a lot of press about her split and spoke about how she'd been unhappy and physically unsatisfied in her relationship over the last decade, and it was the show Sex Life that gave her the confidence to move on. Sarah Shahi and Adam DeMoss moved in together quite quickly. They did a lot of press about their relationship and they got engaged. But the relationship did come to an end just a month and a half ago in April 2025. Sarah did push a lot to try and come back to the L Word reboot when it was on, and her on-screen partner Kate Moennig was pushing for it a lot too. It didn't ever happen, and the Gen Q showrunner said that it was because Sarah was playing a character that was Mexican, and she was primarily Iranian. She had a mother who was born in Spain to a Spanish and Iranian parents, and then her father was Iranian. I do think there's more to that story, as I have also heard people talk about some questionable social media content from her and Steve Howey, and also her sister, who hosts a podcast called Politically Homeless. But I haven't done a deep dive into it. But if I ever do a standalone L Word video or if it involves Steve Howie enough and I do a standalone Shameless one, I will definitely get into it there. Now, the L Word, where it all began for me and YouTube anyway. As I said, if this video does okay, I would do an individual video on each of the shows I'm talking about here because there is so much to talk about each of these shows when it comes to behind the scenes. But for the L Word, I could do an entire series. I used to talk about the L Word on my original channel, and originally I was really just using what I knew about the industry to explain things about the L Word and the filming process, and I would follow all the social media and find information and stuff about filming and filming locations, and I'd collate it all together and I'd follow a lot of the crew and I'd put together videos, and people started following me that way for updates about the L Word. But over the years that the show was on, I built up relationships with not only crew members and other people who worked on the show through Showtime, but also people that were cast members on the show, and spoke to everyone from showrunners to directors to assistants. And as I've mentioned before, I even got to go to the L Word set and the finale wrap party for the end of the series. I also ended up being asked to work with Showtime for a few special things like National Coming Out Day and for the premiere and the finale of each season, but also through the filming and airing of Gen Q, I built up relationships with people from the original show, and I also have a lot of friends who have relationships with people from the original show too. So all of that to say, most of what I'm going to talk about here is based on information from dozens and dozens of people. And I also know a lot more now than what I did even when the show was finishing airing. My go-to response with anything is naturally to give people the benefit of a doubt and to try and be positive. But there aren't really a lot of positives when it comes to the set of both the L Word and Generation Q. In case you know nothing about the shows, in a nutshell, the L Word ran on Showtime for 6 seasons between 2003 and 2009. The show was a massive deal, especially for lesbians and the women-loving women community, and watching the L Word is very much a rite of passage for lesbians and bi women and women-loving women and queer people. It's just one of those shows that is a rite of passage. That's the only way to put it. I will never forget when I first started watching the show. It came out the year that I moved to America, and I went into the South Tampa Best Buy 5 minutes before it closed with my first girlfriend to buy the first season of the L Word DVD because we wanted to watch it, and we were still super closeted, and I remember being so paranoid that someone was going to see us buying the L Word, like a shock horror. The show will hold a special place in my heart. It was the first time I ever saw lesbians on TV that I could relate to and that were shown in a positive light. It wasn't the butt of the joke like Carol and Susan on Friends. And I even have an L Word tattoo of the Ross and Rachel of the L Word, Bet and Tina. But saying all of that, let's get into everything behind the scenes, and I guarantee you will have not heard a lot of this stuff, no matter if you watched all of my original videos. If you're a huge L Word fan, there's going to be a lot of details. The original show starred Jennifer Beals as Bette Porter, Laurel Holloman as Tina Kennard, Leisha Hailey as Alice Piasecki, Kate Moennig as Shane McCutcheon, Pam Grier as Kit Porter, Mia Kirshner as Jenny Schechter, Erin Daniels as Dana Fairbanks, and the first season also had Eric Mabius as Tim and Karina Lompard as Marina. Although the show focused around primarily lesbians, there was a very large viewership of straight women, and I've always thought that was because it was a show about women, and all of those characters were their own people with their own storylines. They weren't just someone's wife, someone's girlfriend, someone's mother, sister. And it also aired when Sex and the City was finishing, and even the marketing for the first season very much played into trying to get some of this audience. They had this whole tagline that was same sex, different city. The show was an immediate success for Showtime, and people were pretty surprised by this. It was their #1 show for the first 2 years that it was on, and when it ended its 6th season in 2009, there was talk from that point about bringing the show back, which they ended up doing in 2019 with 3 of the original stars of the show, Jennifer Beals, Leisha Hailey, and Kate Moennig. The L Word Generation Q is what they ended up calling the revival reboot, and that ran for 3 very controversial seasons with the 3 original stars and also a plethora of new actors playing new characters. The new cast was made up of Ari Mandy playing Danny, Jacqueline Tobani playing Finley, Rosanny Zayas playing Sophie, Sepideh Moafi playing Gigi, Leo Sheng playing Micah, and there also were 2 significant guest stars being Stephanie Allen playing Nat and Rosie O'Donnell playing Carrie. The L Word Generation Q was not helmed by the original creator and showrunner of the L Word, Eileen Chaikin, and although Showtime asked several original writers to return to Gen Q, none of them did. According to some of these writers, they were also asked to return to the show while it was running. Most of the reasonings that these writers gave to either me or people that I've spoken to were a lack of desire to work again with certain cast members or to work with the new showrunner that had been hired for Generation Q. The new showrunner was Marja Lewis Ryan, and when I say new showrunner, I mean new. Marja's prior experience was mostly in stage plays and a few small movies. She didn't have any experience with television, and she was selected by Eileen Chaikin, who was the original creator and showrunner. So to talk a little bit about the original show before we get into the meatier subject of Generation Q, the original show was loosely based, some of the characters, on Eileen Chaikin, the showrunner. She actually had 2 characters that represented her, one being Jenny, who represented her in her younger years, and the first season is basically a storyline that plays out with Jenny, is something based on what happened to Eileen when she moved to LA, where she had this affair with an older cafe owner, and that plays out with Jenny through season 1. And then the other character that represented Eileen was Bette Porter, who played Eileen in that time period where she was older and more successful and in a relationship. According to a lot of the people that I've spoken to, there were a lot of interesting dynamics on set. Karina Lombard and Jennifer Beals did not get on, and Karina Lombard actually ended up leaving the show, and years down the line, just before Generation Q came out, Karina Lombard spoke about her issues with Jennifer Beals and Eileen Chaikin on Instagram when there was all these posts put out for Pride. Karina Lombard decided that was the moment to let all of this out. There was also quite a big pay dispute in the 2nd to 3rd season hiatus, and this was between a lot of the younger cast members and Showtime. If you've seen the show, you know that in season 3, one of the main characters is killed off, and this was actually because of this pay dispute. And this was something that really, this only came out, this information, like very, very recently. And it was because when the younger cast members were all starting to renegotiate their contracts, they were told, oh, you should all band together like the Friends cast, because that had only happened a few years before. And they all banded together and said, hey, we all want to be paid the same and we want this increase. And Eileen Chaikin was told by Showtime executives, yes, you can give them this increase, but we don't want them to think that they have control and say, so yes, give them the increase, but to make up the difference salary-wise, you need to kill one of them off. Erin Daniels' character Dana was the one that ended up being killed off, and a lot of the younger cast did allegedly get on, but there was a little bit of a showmance also, allegedly between Kate Moennig and Mia Kirshner, who played Shane and Jenny, and many people have joked that that was the inspiration for Shane and Jenny in the final season of The L Word. I believe Kate Moennig did actually make a comment about this during a watch party at Henrietta Hudson's when she was there for one of the airings of an episode of Generation Q when it was airing a couple of years ago. For anyone who doesn't know, for Generation Q, on occasion, the cast members would go to watch parties at two particular bars on Sunday nights when new episodes would come out. There were watch parties at gay and lesbian bars all around the US. It became like a very big thing during the original show, and I went to quite a few because I was in my like late teens and early 20s when the original show aired. There was actually a woman who had pulled some strings during the final season of the original show, and she had paid to have her own private watch party with her friends and the cast of the show, and it was during the sixth and final season, which is infamously terrible. And she said that the cast was bitching about how much they hated the last season of the show, which is pretty much known now. The last season, for some reason, was turned into this whole whodunit murder mystery where you never actually find out who murdered one of the main characters. The last episode had Lucy Lawless play this detective that shows up when Jenny, one of the main characters, is found dead, and the characters all go down to the station for questioning, and nothing happens. They show up and get out of their cars and have this like slow motion, bizarre montage. And that is the end of the show. Throughout the last few episodes, there are like snippets of characters being questioned by Lucy Lawless' detective character, because the scene where Jenny, the main character, is found, Lucy Lawless arrives, and that is actually like the first scene of the entire season. So you knew straight away that this character died, and they marketed the whole season around who killed Jenny. Each episode would have a cold open where the main character was shown to have a reason to take Jenny's life. As if all of that isn't bad enough, there is actually more to this, because there are these like little interrogation scenes to the main characters scattered throughout like the last episode. But there's more to those scenes, and they actually are posted on YouTube. If you haven't seen them, please, I beg you, do not go and watch them. They're all bizarre, and they are all left best unseen, because they do add like more lore to some of the characters, but it's just like unwanted lore. But I really, really do not recommend watching them. So the show ended in 2009. The whole last season was a murder mystery that was never solved. And the reason that it was left open-ended is because there was originally a plan for a spin-off where Leisha Hailey's character, Alice, was falsely imprisoned for the crime. A pilot was shot with Leisha Hailey, Laurie Metcalf, and Fama Jensen, and the show was titled The Farm, and it was set in a prison where like each wing had a different nickname. So there was The Farm, The Jungle, and Showtime decided not to pick this pilot up after they saw it. They probably were a bit of ahead of the time, because a few years later, Orange is the New Black would come out, but nothing happened with it. So when Gen Q was announced and they were rebooting the L Word, one of the things people were really looking forward to finally hearing about was what happened to Jenny. This wasn't addressed until the second episode when the show came out in December 2019, and it was very anticlimactic. It was basically just one throwaway line by Jennifer Beals' character Bet saying that Jenny took her own life.
A friend of mine died by suicide on my property. She drowned in my pool. Her name? Jenny Schechter.
Even the actress Mia Kirshner, who played Jenny, was outraged by this, and she put out several tweets at the time saying so. Unfortunately, the handling of Jenny's character and the ending of the original show was a preview of what was to come. When it comes to the original show, a lot of people I've spoken to didn't really have a lot of positive things to say about the environment and certain cast members. But the L Word Generation Q takes the cake. And I quite honestly probably don't know of a messier show than the L Word Generation Q behind the scenes. There were so many behind the scenes issues on Generation Q, it'd honestly be quicker to talk about the few people who there weren't issues with. Right off the bat, one of the biggest problems with the L Word Generation Q is the fact that the 3 original stars of the L Word and the new showrunner did not get on at all. And by the final season, they had major issues, allegedly. And the set was very split because of this. From what I was told, the original premise of the show was that the 3 original cast members from the L Word were supposed to kind of do a passing of the torch over the seasons to the new characters. If you watch the first season, it does seem like this is being set up and it's what they're going for. They put Bet's character with Danny, Finley and Sophie work at Alice's show, and then Finley and Tess work at Shane's bar, Dana's. Now, do I think this would have worked with the showrunner, writers, characters, and actors that they had? No, I don't. But what multiple people told me is that Jennifer Beals did not like working with the new cast members and did not want to work with them, only if it was absolutely necessary. Now, a big point of contention with the fans was that the original show had ended with the Ross and Rachel of the L Word getting together. Bet and Tina is their name in case you don't watch the show. And when Generation Q came back, Bet and Tina were divorced, so people were pissed. The actress who played Tina, Laurel Holloman, in the intervening 10 years since the L Word had ended and Gen Q coming back, she'd actually retired from acting and had become a very successful artist. So Jennifer Beals ended up convincing Laurel Holloman to return for 2 episodes in the first season that they kept secret until it aired. And actually, the first episode that Laurel Holloman returns was actually the very first YouTube video ever posted. Everyone was really happy she came back. And then Jennifer Beals asked Laurel Holloman to do some more episodes, and she came back for half of the episodes in season 2. In the 2 episodes that Laurel Holloman did in the first season, we actually learned that Tina is engaged to someone else called Carrie. And when the show came back for season 2, they ended up casting Rosie O'Donnell as Laurel's fiance, Carrie. From all my experience with the show, the 2 cast members by far that went out of their way to be very kind to me were Laurel Holloman and Rosie O'Donnell. Laurel Holloman was actually the first person to ever recognize me as the dumbest thing I've ever said, but it was when I went to one of her art shows in London and she came up to me and said, "Oh, I know who you are, you're Ash Silver." And this was July 2022 when I had maybe 10,000 subscribers on my original channel, and I think on this channel I maybe had 2,000. During the second season, to deal with this having to keep the OGs and the Gen Q cast separate, they bumped up this character, Gigi, played by Sepideh Moafi, to a series regular, and this ended up causing even more issues down the line. During the first season, a lot of the people that were on my channel and stuff, we were talking a lot about how they should put Gigi's character and Danny's character together, even though they'd never actually shared a scene together. And Gigi was a very minor character in the first season, but they did end up doing this. And astonishingly, Gigi and Danny as a couple was really the only successful thing that came out of Gen Q as a standalone. Yes, a lot of people liked the original character stuff, but when it came to the new characters and new stuff that happened with the show, Danny and Gigi by far was the most successful thing. I'm just going to remind people here that what I'm going to say in the rest of this is stuff from multiple people, from crew to people who worked at Showtime, cast, writers, directors, and some of this stuff I saw with my very own eyeballs. This isn't just like a rumor that went through 10 different versions. It isn't something that one person who maybe doesn't like someone said, but this is information that has come through multiple sources. But of course, people are free to come to their own conclusions. Another thing to mention is that I don't know every single thing. I don't know the genesis of some issues between people, but I'm just giving as much information as I can. One of the things that I don't know exactly what the first problem was the issue between the 3 original cast members and the showrunner. I don't know if there was like one thing that set everything off or if it was just stuff that built up over time. From everything that I've heard, it seems to be more likely that it was everything just built up over time, and it did get progressively worse because in the first season it seemed as though they could at least tolerate each other. But by the second season there were a lot of issues. And there were also then issues between Jennifer Beals and Sepideh Moafi, who played Gigi. Multiple people did tell me that although allegedly the main issue was between Jennifer and Sepideh, that there was also issues between Leisha and Kate and Sepideh as well. After season 2 ended, there was quite a chunk of time between season 2 ending and the official renewal for season 3 coming through. And apparently this was to do with this issue between Jennifer and Sepideh. What this issue was or what the start of it was is another mystery from the L Word set, as I was never able to get like a concrete answer. Most people told me that they thought it had to do with them not liking how popular the character was and how popular the new couple of Danny and Gigi were. And I know that sounds dumb, but actors, this stuff, like it really matters a lot of the time. According to over 24 people I spoke to, there was an ultimatum issued that Jennifer Beals did not want to continue with the show if Sepideh was on the show. So Danny and Gigi were broken up and Sepideh exited the show in the 3rd episode of season 3. And if you watch the show, you'll also know that the first 2 episodes, Sepideh's character is barely in it. She's in 2 tiny scenes and they're only with the character of Danny, played by Ari Mandy, who by all accounts everybody said really nice things about and said she was one of the people that was always so agreeable and so amenable and would do all of the promotion stuff, and a lot of Showtime people had praise for her. And apparently when they filmed these Danny and Gigi scenes, they also were filmed separately from everyone else. In the 3rd episode where Sepideh exits, she just does have more scenes by that stage, but Jennifer Beals herself was not in that episode and had left the show or like stepped back from the show. She only appeared in season 3 in episodes 1, 2, 9, and 10. And if the show had continued, she wouldn't be in the next season. I actually was the first person who spoke about Jennifer exiting the show like a month before it came out like officially, and I remember at the time a ton of people like did not believe me that it was happening.
I just want to know how this all got fucked up. That's my number one question. How do you drive you got 2 things going for you, Jennifer Beals and Sepideh, and you lost them both within 2 episodes. How does that happen?
I also did a live with my L Word bestie, Jess Rothschild, and we actually broke the news about Gigi leaving the show and what had happened behind the scenes. And again, a lot of people didn't believe us at the time.
A few people are asking, is it Seppi's choice to leave? How do we want to answer this? Because I feel like people deserve an answer and they're only going to get the truth out of us.
In no way did she turn around and say, hey, I want to leave the show.
Like, it's part of the reason that it took so long for them to renew the show had to do with some casting issues. And I don't know anything for sure because I wasn't in the room. I don't know these people personally, but from what I understand, from what I understand, there was some type of issue with Jennifer Beals and Sepideh. I can't even imagine. That's why I made that joke. I'm sitting here like, what on earth? Like, it's not like these people have that many scenes together. They dated briefly in the previous season and now they're already paired off with new people. So it's not like they would ever even have to share space at all. So But that's my understanding, that there was an issue between the two of them, and it kind of an ultimatum came down. Seppi was like, okay, I'll leave. And then Jennifer left for a completely unrelated reason.
Leisha and Kate have spoken about not getting why Gigi was so popular. They've talked about this a few times on their podcast Pants, which they co-host together. Most people have just kind of answered with, do you have eyeballs? From the original L Word, Leisha and Kate have been like best friends and very close ever since they were on the show. And by all accounts, that is a real, actual like best friendship, not one of these like Hollywood fake friendships. And they really do, again, like from everything I've heard, have each other's back. Everyone at Showtime said the only way they could really ever get Kate to do anything with the show was if they got Leisha to do it. A lot of people from Showtime said that it was just really difficult anytime that they had to do any sort of shoot, and there was constant like rearranging and sometimes refusing to do things. The thing about the L Word Generation Q is that a big part of the audience's interest in the show was the original characters. And I don't agree with a lot of the behind the scenes behavior of the original cast, but they did have a magic that the new cast just could not replicate. And most of the original part of the show was seemingly being pushed out by the showrunner. And so you had this difficulty with a lot of the people who were watching the show and interested in it were only getting like these tiny bits of the original cast, and the original cast were frustrated by what was being written for them. And then the new cast were also frustrated because it was like they had these tight restraints on them, and it was certain material that they weren't happy with either. To put it in perspective for people who don't know anything about the L Word or didn't watch, I literally spent like my free time, because I was a tiny channel, talking about the show and really enjoyed it. And even by season 3, I had lost my patience. And I'm someone that is always trying to stay positive, and I just couldn't anymore. And I really liked some of the new cast. Like I liked Seppi, I liked Jacqueline Tobani, I loved Rosie being on the show, and I loved Danny and Gigi too. I was a big fan of them. But all of those things were kind of ruined. They got rid of Danny and Gigi. Seppi was out of the show. Jack was given kind of like a weird storyline. I honestly was so frustrated by the end of the show. And when I saw the finale, I just couldn't stay positive anymore. And I ended up having to like re-record my finale video like 4 times because I was so angry about it, because it was built up to be this like great thing and this big wedding episode, and it was terrible. And I always stayed respectful and just issued criticism about not only the episode, but how everything was marketed and the final season in general. There was a lot of criticism around not only the final episode, but the final season, and also how the final season and finale was marketed. Because if you watch anything that was a trailer or promo for the final season and all of the episodes, they put it as if it was going to be like all of the original characters and then these 2 couples, Bet and Tina, the originals from the original L Word, and Danny and Gigi from the new show that were really popular, and just all of these other things that were not in the final season. There were these 2 couples that they weren't even in over half the episodes. By episode 3, neither of those couples or characters are even on the show anymore. And the final episode was supposed to be this big wedding of these characters from the original show that people have liked for 20 years, and they maybe have 10 minutes of screen time through the entire episode. I was told by multiple people at Showtime that Showtime don't really care about the L Word at all. And I don't think that's surprising to people who watch the show, because apparently when they greenlit the L Word Generation Q, it was done by by someone who ended up leaving after the first season of The L Word. And so then they just didn't care about the show. And it was, by all accounts, just a headache for Showtime. And so that's why it was given very, very little attention. The only thing that Showtime really cared about when it came to The L Word is that they knew that it had a very dedicated, loud, and fan base that was going to rally for it. And so they thought, oh, well, that's a good thing that we have these fans. And so when things like the final season was happening, the show was becoming a headache for them, especially with a lot of the issues that were going on behind the scenes. And so the marketing department was just told, oh, give the fans what they want, even though that wasn't going to be what was delivered with the actual episodes. And I know that sounds crazy, but that is what countless people told me. According to multiple people at Showtime, there was lots of offers sent out for the final season, and especially the finale, for people from the original show to appear, and a lot of notable lesbian actresses were also offered guest appearances in the final season. But the only responses that they got were the people that you see: Fletcher, Kaylani, Chrishell, and G-Flip. Also, in regards to the marketing, when the finale was on, the fans were constantly asking for interviews and basically anything. According to the people, again, that worked at Showtime, the first 2 seasons, they said it was nearly impossible to get the OGs to agree to anything, especially if it involved the original showrunner. Everything also had to be brought to all 3, and Jennifer and Kate especially weren't really interested in a lot. Hi guys, editing Ash here, and editing G, of course. One thing that I didn't put in the video because I thought I might be able to dig up more information while making the video was kind of something just I myself have been really curious about, and I've never again been able to get like a straight answer on, was when Jennifer Beals stepped back from the show in season 3. As I just said, she was in episodes 1, 2, 9, and 10. And I don't think I actually mentioned this at any point in the video, but because the 3 original stars, Jennifer, Kate, and Leisha, brought back or had like a big hand in bringing back Generation Q. And so because Jennifer, Kate, and Leisha were so instrumental in bringing the show back, they got executive producer credit, which is very common. Like Michael C. Hall has that on all of the Dexter franchise stuff too. And with executive producer credits, they have like a lot more say, but they get pretty much like a second paycheck. And when Jennifer stepped back in season 3, her executive producer credit was removed from episodes 3 through 8, which is incredibly, incredibly rare. I have never seen that before, which is why I am so curious about it and why I've asked everyone about it. Now, the closest I could get to like information on it was someone I spoke to at Showtime. You know who you are, girl. Thank you. She ended up telling me that when they would do like a lot of the executive producer kind of check-ins, because everything like, and I don't mean just stuff like the episode, like anything with like promotional stuff and things, this all goes through executive producers. And the person who worked at Showtime told me that there was really no difference between episodes that Jennifer was in and episodes that she wasn't in when it came to the executive producer stuff. And this person said that pretty much running all of the things that they had to run by the executive producers was done in a call, and usually it was just Jennifer, Kate, and Leisha's assistants on this call, and that Jennifer's assistant was on all of the ones that she wasn't in. So that's why it makes me even more curious, like, how was her name? Like, that had to be, in my opinion, I think that it was done strategically, because it was like the first thing that I noticed when I saw the episode. I was like, ooh, that's trying to send a message, because unless it was some sort of money thing, which I highly, highly, highly doubt, because especially with this information that, you know, she was still in on like getting everything passed by her and stuff like that. There's no way she didn't get paid for those episodes, in my opinion. And so the fact that her name isn't in the episodes, I think that was purposefully done to send a message, as in, I don't want my name associated with this stuff. And in all fairness to her, I can't really blame her after seeing those episodes because, I mean, obviously it has been like 3 years since all of this happened. But even if you go back to my original channel and those episodes were coming out, like, oh, they were rough. They were rough. And I also haven't mentioned there was a musical at one point in these episodes, so I can't blame the woman for taking her name off those episodes. And by season 3, I mean, I think it was pretty obvious. Like, even Leisha and Kate, again, in all fairness to them, they did not hide their feelings on what was going on. And although I do understand, like, there's only so much they can say, you know, when they're tied into the show. This show has been such a huge part of their career, and it was their paychecks and everything like that. All 3 of them, it definitely was clear that they were not fully on board with the writing and everything like that. And again, in fairness to Jennifer Beals, the by far best episodes of the entire Gen Q was episodes 1 and 2 of season 3. And from what I've been told, Jennifer Beals had quite a heavy hand in writing and a lot of the storyline and everything like that. And I did say this way back then, but I also believe that she kind of played her last card to say, I'm going to leave the show. You need to get these 2 characters together. So again, it's a complicated show with complicated, I mean, people are complicated. I have very complicated feelings about the show because it meant so much to me as a teenager when I found it and everything like that. And then, to be honest, like, I do, you know, maybe sometimes to a fault, hence this channel, that I have to be honest about the show. And really, like, I do owe the L Word pretty much my livelihood too, because I really don't think that Coffee and Cults would exist without my original channel, which would not exist without the L Word. So some people are probably like, well, this woman has a lot of feelings about the L Word, but I am just trying to put everything on the table. And, you know, there's a lot of things. Yes, like, I pretty much met like all of the cast. I was on the set and I saw things with my own eyes. But again, the amount of people that I have spoken to over the years and years, and people even from the original show coming out of the woodwork and things, and even like friends of mine, stuff that they know as well, or people that they know in the industry or that worked on the show. I mean, I could go on for days, and that's why, you know, I do have a lot of feelings about the L Words. I'm sorry if some of it comes across as like hot, cold, everywhere. I'm just trying to tell you the entire story from what I have been able to glean anyway. Even that San Francisco interview that Jennifer and Eileen did the day before the premiere, I was told that originally it was supposed to be Jennifer and Marja, but Jennifer said she wouldn't do it if Marja was there and asked to take Eileen. Showtime originally said no because Eileen at that point wasn't involved with the show, like in a face-to-face capacity. Marja actually ended up turning down the invite, so only then did they go back to Jennifer and say, okay, yes, Eileen can go, and they rearranged things. But apparently most of the stuff that they tried to do didn't happen because of all of the issues. Apparently by the end of season 3, though, there was a bit of a different situation going on because the show was ending, there was the wedding of Bette and Tina, and so there was a lot of people requesting interviews with Jennifer, Leisha, and Kate in particular. And Showtime people told me that they didn't even bring those offers to the OGs at that time because at this stage, Showtime were apparently so worried that the original cast were going to say something about the shit show that the show had become, that they didn't want to risk it. So it was a blanket don't even bring these offers to them. So saying all of that, do I have sympathy that the original cast were not happy with what was happening to their characters and the show in general that had been brought back primarily by them? Yes, because people at Showtime told me no matter what writer's name was on the episode, Marja was the person who was fully in control. And Marja has said that herself in interviews. My friend Jess did an interview with her where she says that outright. But if I'm going to be completely honest about Marja and about Showtime, I have to be honest about everything I saw and heard and everything that scores of people told me. A lot of the cast members did not make things easy, and many of them made things very difficult for people who were just trying to do their jobs. And I don't mean executives making buckets of money. I mean assistants, camera operators, people that were making a living not being paid a fortune. And I don't think that there's any excuse for screaming at a 24-year-old assistant because Showtime won't authorize $30,000 for your hair. There were certain main cast who were nothing but extremely kind to me, and the multiple people I spoke to also said wonderful things about these people, mainly Laurel Holloman, Rosie O'Donnell, Jacqueline Tobani, and Ari Mandy. Jamie Clayton, Leo Shang, and Jillian Marcato seemed to also be kind, do their job, show up, do what they were supposed to, and go home. I will also say I spent almost an entire day with Jamie Clayton. She actually showed me around the set. She was absolutely lovely, and that wasn't her job. She did it to be nice and knew I was a big fan of the show. She did tell me a little fib, though, about the finale being amazing, as I was there the day of the series finale table read, but I forgive you, Jamie, because I mean, what was she going to say when I asked? She goes on a bender, ruins the wedding of my favorite couple, drives off with a random guy, and things end in a cliffhanger that will never be resolved because the show was cancelled. She had to lie. There was allegedly some messy stuff with Kate and Jamie, who were very close during the early parts of the show, even if just based on where the Showtime car service used to pick Jamie up from to bring her to set, but I don't know all the nitty-gritty details of that. I have some stuff to say about the L Word New York, but there's a lot more to say about the L Word and the behind the scenes of that show. I have stories for days. So if you want an L Word standalone video, comment, subscribe, watch this chapter a few times because I'm going to check the retention. Overall, I think it would be easy to say the show failed because of the showrunner, but not 100% of the blame lies with the showrunner. Part of the blame definitely lies with Showtime, who do not give a shit about the L Word, but I also think there are a lot of other people who share in that blame too. When Gen Q was cancelled, there was an announcement in the cancellation notice to say that Showtime was working on another series called The L Word New York. After about a year with no word, I heard that they weren't going to move forward with that show because Showtime has no interest in the L Word. That actually is why Generation Q, you can't even watch it because apparently Showtime, I don't know all like the details of this, but apparently Showtime, there was, when the deal was happening with Paramount, there was like cash flow issues and they basically had to delete shows from like their servers, and they picked Gen Q because like they just don't see any profit in it or any viability in it. According to multiple people who work at Showtime, the main plan for Showtime properties right now is to franchise the hell out of them, like with Dexter and Yellowstone, and then to cast big name guest stars they can market the hell out of in their shows, which I also think is clear if you watch Dexter and Yellowjackets, which we're about to talk about in a minute. But according to an article that came out in Us Weekly a few days ago, the L Word New York might not be as dead as everybody thought. There was a mention by Neil Patrick Harris's husband David that he was going to be part of the L Word reboot and it was going to be filmed in Vancouver. Everyone I've asked about this, be it people that worked on the original, worked on Gen Q, worked at Showtime, has been utterly baffled by this article coming out because everyone thought that L Word New York was dead. The only conclusion that I can come to is either it's a pilot they don't know what's going to happen with it because Showtime is so hell-bent on this franchise thing, and maybe there is something they think they can do with it, or it is some sort of licensing thing, because I really don't think the L Word New York, this is just my opinion and from speaking to other people too, I just don't see a world where the original cast come back, because no one wants to see Bet without Tina, and Laurel Holloman, she's not acting anymore. It was nice enough for her to come back for Generation Q. And also, according to Kate and Leisha themselves, who spoke about it on their podcast several months ago, they know nothing about the L Word New York and they're not involved. As I said, I have asked a few people to see if I can find out any information, and it just doesn't seem like there is much known at this stage. I will add in anything here if I learn, like, between filming this and putting out the video and editing. And if you really are, like, interested, I'd say follow my Instagram, because most likely I'll put, like, updates there if I know anything. I think the most likely scenario, as I said, with the L Word New York, is it's going to be something completely new. But I think that Eileen Chaikin and Jennifer Beals will probably be executive producers who will get checks from that show. Kate and Leisha aren't involved, but they've also just had a book come out in the past week, and they have said some interesting things in interviews. There was one in particular that seemed to maybe be saying something without saying something. And again, this is just my interpretation, but Kate and Leisha were talking on a podcast about the fact that when the Generation Q was being put together, Leisha was basically offered less money than Kate. And she talked about how Kate stood up for her and said, no, we need to be paid the same and everything. And the way Leisha worded it, she said that Kate was the only person who stood by her side through that. And these are highly experienced actors that have gone through a lot of media training, and they know exactly what to say and how to say it. And that, to me, maybe speaks volumes. So if it's true there is going to be an L Word New York and they're not going to be involved, that does kind of suck, because they are not only two people who were in the original show, they were in all of Generation Q, and they are two lesbian women who really were a big part of just the L Word and the past 20, 25 years of our whole culture. And I do think that if anybody is going to be continuing on the L Word, that they should at least be involved. But I guess we'll have to stay tuned to see what happens with the L Word New York, if it ever comes to air, or what happens. So, as I said, if you want to see more L Word discussions, let me know. But I will put anything else I hear up over on my Instagram. Dexter is Showtime's most popular series of all time and has turned into a full-on franchise, with a lot of people making jokes that maybe Michael C. Hall is going to be playing the character Dexter for the rest of his life. The original Dexter series ran from 2006 to 2003 and ran for 8 seasons. As of next month, it will have 3 spin-offs, with 1 still to come and 2 which have aired this year alone. After the main Dexter series, there was a 7-year hiatus, and in 2021, a limited series came out, the first spin-off, Dexter New Blood. This concluded in 2022, and at the end of last year, 2024, a prequel series, Dexter Original Sin, aired. And after its first season finale, the show was picked up for a second season that will air probably next year. Next month, the 4th Dexter series will air, Dexter Resurrection. The Dexter original series is based on the series of novels from the author Jeff Lindsay. And while there are 8 Dexter novels, the final of which was released in 2025, really only the general premise and the first novel, Darkly Dreaming Dexter, is used for inspiration for the series. The first season of the show follows the first novel closely, but does have some major key differences towards the end. But from the second season on, things go in a very different direction. What are you doing? The general premise of the show... Jay, what are you doing? Come here, babe. Set in Miami, Florida, Dexter follows Dexter Morgan, a blood spatter analyst for Miami Metro's forensic department. The show follows Dexter and the rest of the police force as they investigate murders, and the police force includes Dexter's sister, Deborah Morgan, who, like her and Dexter's father, serves as a detective. While there are various bad guys episode to episode, the show follows a similar formula to Buffy in that there are occasional Monsters of the Week episodes, or in this case, Murders of the Week, but there's also usually a season overarching villain, or to use the phrase coined by Buffy, there is usually a season big bad that both Dexter and Miami Metro are usually trying to catch. Originally, I actually first tuned into Dexter's very first episode premiere because there were Buffy writers involved, so it was a full circle moment when I tuned in to watch Sarah Michelle Gellar in the prequel Original Sin several months ago. But put a pin in that because there's definitely some interesting things to talk about when it comes to Sarah Michelle Gellar, both Showtime's handling of the character and Sarah Michelle Gellar's alleged handling of Patrick Dempsey and their behind the scenes issues. So based on the description I give you, you might think that Dexter is a run-of-the-mill police investigation type show, but I didn't mention the one key difference that sets Dexter apart from all of those other type shows and what makes the series so interesting. By day and sometimes by night, Dexter does work for Miami Metro, but most of the time by night and sometimes by day, Dexter is a serial killer. But the really interesting thing is that he only kills other killers. The original Dexter series stars Michael C. Hall as Dexter, Jennifer Carpenter as Deborah Morgan, Dexter's sister, Julie Benz from Buffy and Angel fame as Dexter's love interest and later wife, Rita Morgan, Lauren Velez as Maria LaGuerta, James Remar as Harry Morgan, Dexter's father, David Zayas as Angel Batista, C.S. Lee as Vince Masuka, and Desmond Harrington as Joseph Quinn, who joins in season 3. There's also standout, although short-lived performances from Eric King as James Dokes for the first 2 seasons, Christian Camero as Brian Moser, Julie Stiles as Lumen Pierce, and of course Jonathan Lithgow in his Emmy-winning performance as Arthur Mitchell. So we'll talk a little bit about the original show first. During the filming of Dexter's second season, there started to be rumors about a romantic relationship developing between the series' lead, Michael C. Hall, and the actress who played his sister, Deborah, Jennifer Carpenter. These rumors continued through the 3rd season of the show, and while nothing was really reported in the mainstream media, there were blind items and gossip forums that spoke about the two dating and occasionally being seen out on romantic dates. The actors confirmed they were in a relationship when they eloped on New Year's Eve 2008. When they eloped, they did so very, very quickly, so they just had the 2 of them and they did this at Big Sur. During the following year, in 2009, when filming the 4th season of Dexter, Michael was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. Hall was only 37 and Carpenter was 29 when he was diagnosed, and Carpenter helped him through this diagnosis and continuing to work on the series, as Hall kept his diagnosis under wraps for the most part, only later revealing that he actually had to wear a wig while portraying Dexter during that season. Hall's performance didn't suffer one bit though, as the 4th season is seen as one of the best, if not the best. Hall and Jonathan Lithgow, who played that season's big bad, both won Golden Globes for their performance in season 4. Hall went into remission and fully recovered, but a year later, exactly 2 years after their elopement in December 2010, the couple announced that they were divorcing after being separated already for a significant time. By the time this announcement happened, there had been a lot of rumors and speculation about their split, and there were also rumors that Michael Hall had started a relationship with his new co-star for that season, Julia Stiles. A few days after Hall and Carpenter's announcement, the rumors were so intense that Julia Stiles issued a statement denying that she had any sort of relationship with Hall. From everything I've heard, it does seem like Jennifer Carpenter and Michael Hall handled their divorce well. There actually ended up being rumors that they were getting back together in around 2012 when they were filming the 7th season of Dexter, because they were spending so much time together outside of work. And when the tabloids got pictures of them cuddling up together at sunset on a beach in California, the rumors went into overdrive. Jennifer and Michael were actually asked about these rumors at the Paley Fest panel in September 2013 because there just was so many people talking about them potentially getting back together. Jennifer Carpenter answered that their marriage didn't look like anyone else's, and so their divorce didn't either. And she also added that there was nothing but love and respect between them. Again, just before, like how I was saying, Leisha Hailey and Kate Moennig, it is an actual real friendship and not this Hollywood fake friendship that sometimes people tell the press, oh yeah, we all work together and we're all best of friends, when really, a lot of the time, the people either can't stand each other or they just are work relationships that they don't have any sort of real friendship. But based on everything I've heard and people that I've spoken to that have had lots of interactions, been on the set, been around them quite a bit, it is, according to anyone I've spoken to, how Jennifer Carpenter and Michael Hall say it is, because they do seem to still get along really well. They've worked together again, and they have nothing but good things to say about each other. That also seems why Jennifer Carpenter didn't have any problem coming back and working again with Michael on the first Dexter continuation series, Dexter New Blood. Anybody I spoke to who had spent any time on the New Blood set or worked at Showtime said that Jennifer Carpenter was super down to earth and is one of those actors that doesn't really have any interest in the whole Hollywood machine and the hype around being famous. One of the Showtime employees I spoke to compared Jennifer Carpenter to Laurel Holloman from The L Word and just said she's a nice person who happens to want to be an actor, is a good actor. She's very easy to deal with, and she just really isn't a high maintenance person or someone that really wants to cultivate a lot of attention. And a lot of the time, that is one of the major difficulties with dealing with actors, is that it's always who is higher up or number one on the call sheet and who is getting attention or more attention than someone else. It really is juggling all of that and all of the egos most of the time. Another actor from the New Blood set that got unanimous praise was Julia Jones. I actually have a friend who has been friends with Julia for years and years and years, and she said some really lovely things about her. I did also ask other people because, of course, that's a friendship. And everybody did say the same thing her friend said, that she was a very nice person and very easy to deal with. And that goes a long way in Hollywood, because being a nice person and being easy to deal with is like striking gold sometimes on these sets. If you aren't super familiar with the whole Hollywood machine and behind the scenes and how a lot of these productions work, it's that all of these actors also have teams of people to deal with. They have managers and publicists and assistants. And I mean, obviously, any job dealing with people, and certain people can be difficult, certain people can just be a nightmare, and different personalities clash. But when it comes to a lot of these managers and publicists, they can be hard work like the actors too. A lot of publicists and managers, they make a lot of money. And when you're representing a very successful successful actor, you generally are good at your job, and your job is fighting tooth and nail for your client, the actor. So that can mean that these publicists and managers and agents are hard work for the people that have to interact with them, like people on the set or people that work for the network, like Showtime. So Jennifer Carpenter, by all accounts, is very easy to work with. With Michael C. Hall, professionally, it seems to be the same. Obviously, he's a huge star for Showtime, and in regards to the Julia Stiles relationship rumor, I have heard that story from multiple people for many years and from all kinds of different places and different people, as in people who've worked on these sets, people that worked for Showtime. I must have said Showtime 9 million times in this video, but none of those people said to me, 100% this is true, this is a fact. Most people said they thought it was true. Most people said that they'd heard it a lot too, but nobody knew 1000%. Quite a few people did say to me that they wouldn't be surprised though, because it seems as though Michael C. Hall is known to be very popular. And two different people said to me that they wouldn't be surprised because Michael C. Hall dated a lot of the women on the Dexter cast. Dexter New Blood came out in fall 2021 and concluded in very early January 2022. The show was paired up on Sunday nights with a new show, Yellowjackets, which is the show we're going to conclude this video with by talking about the behind the scenes, and trust me, you want to stick around for that one. Dexter New Blood picked up 10 years down the line from where the original Dexter ended. I will put a timestamp on the screen for anyone who doesn't want Dexter spoilers, but it is just a very few points about the actual storyline. In the first 2 seasons of the original Dexter, there were a lot of flashbacks to Dexter's life, mainly his childhood and his teen years, and these flashbacks would always show him and his father Harry and how he learned Harry's code and evolved into being someone who became a serial killer who killed other serial killers. In the 3rd season, and this happened through to the final season, Dexter's father, because I'm assuming they ran out of flashbacks, they still had his father appear, but he would appear as a figment of Dexter's imagination, and he would like talk out a lot of things that were going on with his dark passenger and his urges to commit crimes. And so when Dexter New Blood happened, they had Jennifer Carpenter's character, Deborah Morgan, take the place of the father, and so Dexter would have these conversations with Deborah Morgan as a figment of his imagination, because in the series finale of Dexter, Deborah Morgan was killed off. The only other character from the original series that appeared in New Blood was Dexter's son Harrison, played by Jack Alcott. He had tracked down Dexter after learning that Dexter wasn't dead because he faked his death in the series finale of Dexter. Dexter's son Harrison was raised by Dexter's final love interest on the show, Hannah McKay, who was played by Yvonne Strahovski. After Hannah passes away and Harrison has spent a little bit of time in foster care, he comes to Iron Lake in New York, where Dexter is living under a fake name, Jim Lindsay, which is a nod to the original author of the Dexter novels. The rest of the New Blood cast is made up of Julia Jones, who I mentioned just a little bit ago, and she played Dexter's girlfriend on the show, the police chief Angela Bishop. Johnny Sequoia played Angela's daughter Audrey. Alano Miller played Sergeant Logan, and Clancy Brown played the big bad of New Blood, Kurt Caldwell. There were also 2 very minor special guest appearances by actors who played characters on the original series. David Zayas, who played Angel Batista, and he appeared just in the final episode. And then also Jonathan Lithgow, who played the Trinity Killer from the 4th season. New Blood garnered a lot of praise and positive reviews, except for the finale, which that episode was controversial again. That episode had Dexter's son Harrison fatally shoot him, or that's what viewers thought at the time, because when the prequel for Dexter Original Sin, hit our screens at the end of last year, it was revealed that Dexter hadn't actually died and he'd survived, and he was taken to the hospital in the first few minutes of the prequel Original Sin. And the whole series kicks off with Dexter surviving and then thinking in his mind about, oh, when I started at Miami Metro in my 20s, and then the series starts from there. There also was the announcement, of course, that Dexter Resurrection, the next Dexter series, is coming out, and so that is where Dexter Resurrection is going to start too. The trailer for Dexter Resurrection actually just came out last week, and it did show some very short snippets of Dexter also in the hospital and escaping from the hospital. And we see again Angel Bautista, who was in New Blood, and we know that the general premise of Resurrection is that Dexter is going to go to New York, but New York City this time, and meet up with other serial killers that are all played by pretty big actors with name recognition, like Kristen Ritter, Eric Stonestreet, Neil Patrick Harris, Uma Thurman, and Peter Dinklage. With Original Sin and Resurrection having only filmed one season, and Resurrection hasn't even come out yet, it's coming out next month in July, there hasn't been a tremendous amount from the sets to talk about, apart from a few very interesting little tidbits. Dexter is absolutely the blueprint of what everyone at Showtime has told me is the network strategy moving forward, which is revive any series that was popular, franchise it so it can bring in money. And as I mentioned, by next month, there will be 4 Dexter shows, 2 alone airing in 2025. And there's a 5th one, the Trinity prequel series, coming next year in 2026. Other shows like Yellowstone, which is another super popular Showtime series, that show's number of spin-offs will actually surpass Dexter when they're all out. The other part of Showtime's main strategy that Dexter also exhibits is the casting of big name guest stars. And these guest stars generally don't have huge roles, but they're in all of the marketing material and they really, really hype up their appearances. The Dexter prequel had Christian Slater, who was actually a series regular, but then they also had Patrick Dempsey and Sarah Michelle Gellar. Patrick Dempsey and Sarah Michelle Gellar's character had pretty minor roles. Patrick was a series regular and Sarah was billed as a special guest appearance. Sarah's character, Tanya, wasn't in every episode, and the episode she was in, she was literally in about 5 minutes, if that, honestly, sometimes. What was super strange about them being in the show was that Sarah Michelle Gellar's character especially just seemed kind of pointless. And even though she was a guest star, not in every episode, and only in 1 or 2 scenes an episode, she and Patrick Dempsey were front and center for all of the marketing. They went to even like Comic-Con, they did all of the press, they were on everything. And I actually had someone at Showtime tell me that this was the same with Yellowjackets, which I'll talk about that then, but frequently people at Showtime were talking them out of centering all of the marketing material just around the big guest stars. So for Original Sin, apparently they just wanted Patrick Gibson, who plays the new younger Dexter, Christian Slater, who plays his father, Harry Morgan, Sarah Michelle Gellar, and Patrick Dempsey. And that was supposed to be it, not even like the other actual main characters. With the big marketing push leading up to the show, and then with Original Sin airing week to week, people were, of course, trying to figure out, oh, who's going to be the big bad that season? And a lot of people, like when I was going week to week and looking at Reddit and things, people thought that Sarah Michelle Gellar's character was going to be the killer because everybody kept saying, she surely just can't have these tiny, tiny scenes in several episodes because she's on all the marketing and she's being talked about and hyped up. It wouldn't just be for that. She has to be more important. There has to be something more going on. And I really think that's the same thing that's going to happen with Dexter Resurrection. The only other thing that might happen with Dexter Resurrection is that they then use these other serial killers to basically drop down Michael C. Hall's involvement in the coming seasons. Like if it goes on for season 2, 3, 4, that they are able to then kind of offload some of the screen time onto these other characters, because a lot of people at Showtime told me they were really surprised that Michael was going to come back and do all of these sequels and prequels and things. And that's why something like Original Sin, you can understand, like he was only in the first episode for like 5 minutes, but he does the voiceover. And I think that really does tie the show together, but it's definitely a lot different to do a voiceover for every episode that, you know, they can go in the booth and like knock those out in pretty much a day or two. And instead of doing, you know, week to week filming a show for most Showtime series film for like 4 months. Probably the most interesting tidbit from the original Sin set is the alleged issues created by casting these 2 big name actors. If you watch my Grey's Anatomy video, you know that Patrick Dempsey has a bit of a difficult reputation. And if you watched my Buffy video, you know Sarah Michelle Gellar likes things the way she likes them. Allegedly, both Dempsey and Gellar have been in a bit of a back and forth, especially around who is the bigger star. I've talked before about the whole call sheet thing. I mentioned it briefly earlier. And basically, if you don't know a lot about like the call sheet situation, it's basically just a list of the outline of who is on set that day. It will have all of the information, like what scenes are being done, the schedule, what everybody's call times are, and the shot lists, things like that. It's usually distributed by the first assistant director, who's the person who does like all of the scheduling, like when shoots are going to happen and who needs to be where, when, and everything like that. But in regards to what it also means, the biggest star is always number 1 on the call sheet, and usually how you're ranked on the call sheet is, as actors see it, the ranks of importance and fame and notoriety. And again, it sounds like such a dumb thing, but it's really important to actors. And even certain pay and how they're written in the credits, it all ties in, and this stuff will all be in contracts too. Patrick Dempsey has a reputation for being notoriously late to set, and Sarah Michelle Gellar is someone who doesn't really suffer fools, and she is very typical for a former child actor from everything I've heard. Very type A, turns up early, knows her and everyone else's lines forwards and backwards. And Christina Ricci is very like this too, allegedly, which we'll get into in just a second. It does seem as though the biggest clash on the original Sin set and the biggest bit of tension is between these two, and that is the thing that creates kind of any issues. But I can't imagine that Patrick Dempsey will be in season 2, so hopefully things lighten up and hopefully they do a bit more promo around the actress playing the young Deborah, since she's supposed to be like a significant character on the show, but seems to be getting shafted a bit with all of these big names being around and Showtime wanting to promote them so much. Also, the fact that Christian Slater's character, Christian Slater, my former co-star, he has kind of an end date built into the character. So if they only have him for, say, another season, I'm sure they'll really, really push that season 2 is the Christian Slater season. And they did send him out on a lot of promo too. Like him and Sarah Michelle Gellar were doing like a lot of the talk shows, like the Drew Barrymore show and stuff, which again, I just found so odd. Like, why would you not send the actual like main characters of the show? So hopefully they start giving attention and promo to a lot of the younger stars, even someone like Christina Milian, who is very well known, especially to like millennials and stuff. So hopefully they start giving them some promotion and interviews and stuff as well. As I said, Dexter Resurrection is out next month, and if enough people are interested, I'll do a whole Dexter franchise video about all the behind the scenes and other information. So now we're going to move on to the juiciest portion of the video, most likely. I know people will have their preferences, but this is certainly the part of the video with the most information that I haven't ever talked about, and I know has not been talked about publicly ever. So let's talk about the behind the scenes of Yellowjackets. I am going to issue a warning here. If you watch this section, there is a lot of information about behind the scenes, but I will also talk at the end about exactly what is contained in the bonus episode, which, according to people who work at Showtime, the bonus episode won't ever see the light of day. So that's why I feel it's okay to talk about. And I think pretty much everything that I'm going to say about it, they're going to have to rework in some way. There will be just other things that I'll talk about towards the end, but those are more just like my speculation on where they're going to have to go with the show due to some cast issues. The bonus episode stuff will cover some general things like the symbol, the story behind the cabin guy, and all of that. So if you don't want to know, as I said, they're going to have to change this stuff based on what everybody's told me anyway, but you can skip that and I'll put a timestamp at the end too. As I mentioned, when Yellowjackets premiered, it was paired up with Dexter New Blood, and it premiered in November 2021. Showtime itself and the showrunners Ashley Lyle and Bart Nickerson were really surprised by how successful the show's first season was and how much it blew up. Lyle and Nickerson are a married couple, and they ended up coming up with the idea for Yellowjackets. But what is kind of unique about the show, I mean, there's a lot that's unique, but they ended up pitching the show to Showtime, and they pitched 5 seasons. So they know, or they knew, where exactly the show was going. And there are some things even that just happened in the 3rd season that were in their original pitch. They don't have all of the tiny, minute details, of course, ironed out, but they do have the general premise of the show and the big beats throughout the 5 seasons that it's supposed to run for. The show was a big hit in the 1st season, and the 2nd season surpassed it. The 3rd season even surpassed that, and it is, apart from Original Sin, Showtime's most successful show at the moment. The show has started to get more and more popular because it also went to Netflix last year. So season 1 went on there, and season 2 is just about to. So obviously when shows like, especially Showtime shows, but any show goes on something like Netflix, it just opens it up to so many more viewers. But Showtime and HBO shows, it usually explodes because those networks are so tiny because they're paid for networks. And so Netflix just, it brings it to a whole different ball game. Another very unique aspect of Yellowjackets is that Yellowjackets is kind of 2 shows in one. It takes place over 2 timelines. A timeline in the 1990s, it's going to be 1996 through 1998, and then there is the adult timeline that takes place in 2021. The show, when it was coming out, obviously the 1st season came out 2021, 2022, but there was 2 years between the 1st and 2nd season, and then there was 2 years between seasons 2 and 3 because of the writer's strike. So it has supposed to kind of follow along, but because there has been these 2 massive gaps, the show's like present day timeline is still in 2021, 2022. The 2 timelines do follow the same characters though. So you have the 90s timeline played by teen actors, and then you see those characters as adults. The entire premise of the show is that a girls' soccer team from a high school in Wiscasset, New Jersey, end up going to the National Soccer Championship in Washington, and when they're flying there from New Jersey, Their plane crashes in the Canadian wilderness and they are trapped out there for 19 months. The present day timeline then follows the survivors of the crash and of the 19 months, and it follows them in present day, kind of grappling with their lives and dealing with all of the consequences of what they did to survive in the wilderness. In the present day timeline, there's some pretty big name actors, especially playing the survivors. There's Melanie Lynskey playing Shauna Shipman, Christina Ricci playing Misty Quigley, Tawny Cypress playing Ty, Juliette Lewis playing Nat, Lauren Ambrose playing Van, Simone Kessel playing Lottie, and then other non-survivors in the present-day timeline. You have Elijah Wood playing Walter, Sarah DeJarnis playing Shauna's daughter Callie, and Shauna's husband Jeff is played by Warren Cole. In the team timeline, you have Sophie Thatcher playing the young Nat, Sophie Nalise playing the young Shauna, Sammy Hanratty playing the young Misty, Jasmine Savoy Brown playing the young Ty, Liv Hewinson playing the young Van, Kevin Alves playing Travis, Alexa Barriaris playing Mari, Nia Sondana playing Akila, Jenna Burgess playing Mel, Courtney Eaton playing the young Lottie, and then you also had their coach, Coach Ben, that was trapped out there with them too, played by Steven Kruger. And then in the first season and guest appearing in season 2 and 3, you also had Ella Purnell playing Jackie. So let's talk a little bit about the casting, and that involves some of the controversies that ended up happening this season, season 3, because the season only ended from when I'm filming this just over a month ago. One of the most important things to say off the bat is I want to just say something that was actually the first question that I asked the two main people that I spoke to about things with Yellowjackets that were heavily involved with the show. Yellowjackets is a show that I didn't know anyone on prior to speaking to these two people. I pretty much knew, a lot of the stuff that was out there, like a few little things here and there from friends that knew people that had worked on it or had associates, but it was a show that I generally didn't know a lot about behind the scenes before these two people came forward. And one of the things that I'm always nervous about whenever, one, I like a show, and two, I like a lot of the cast, is that you're going to find out that they're not great people. And actually, one of the main people that I spoke to for this video, I was thanking them for everything because they'd given me hours of their time. And she was saying to me, oh, well, it's kind of been nice to vent about it because I feel like I was getting annoying to some of my friends because we'd be talking about like an actor or a movie or something. And I'd be like, oh, they're awful. And I'm like, yeah, start a YouTube channel because honestly, it's just whenever you are talking a lot about, especially Hollywood people, or I feel like really anyone, whenever they start getting like a lot of money and attention and notoriety, they a lot of the time generally just go two paths. They either are wonderful people or they just turn into nightmares. I think that you have to be a very good person at your core to not let all of the trappings of fame and money affect you, because it is so insane whenever you get like a lot of notoriety or you're on like one of these shows, it can turn people into monsters if they don't purposely stay grounded. And saying all of that, the one person that I was really did not want to hear that they were a bad person, it was the first person I asked about, was Melanie Lynskey, because I love her and everyone can relax because apparently, according to the two people I spoke to, she is just as wonderful and amazing as she comes across on camera and social media and everything. And there was nothing but absolute praise and just everyone saying what an awesome person she was. So I was thrilled to hear that. So we can relax. At least Melanie Lynskey is keeping the standards of Hollywood actors on the up as usual. Editing Ash here again. I just wanted to add one thing that I forgot to mention about Melanie Lynskey that a lot of people said, and that was that she really was someone who advocated a lot for her younger counterpart on the show, Sophie Nélisse, and most of them seem to have like a good relationship with their younger counterpart, but Melanie really was the one that everybody mentioned that was specifically the best at doing that, and just somebody who went out of their way to do it a lot. And maybe there's specifically one of them that could take a leaf out of that book. So whenever the casting was done for Yellowjackets, because they had this 5-year plan, we want the show to run for 5 seasons, and also I'm sure because like a lot of these actors are big names, they signed the contracts, all of the cast, for 5 seasons. So in season 2, when the show added 2 more adult survivors, Lauren Ambrose playing Van and Simone Kessel playing Lottie, everybody watching the show assumed that they were going to join the show and be there for the foreseeable unless something happened to their characters. But what is interesting is that they were given 2 very different deals. Lauren Ambrose was given the exact same deal that Melanie Lynskey and Christina Ricci and Juliette and Tawny were all given. She was given a contract for 5 seasons, and that was supposed to be her as a 5th survivor, exactly the same as the 4 original women from season 1. Simone Kessel, her deal was very different. She was, yes, like a series regular, she was in the credits and stuff, but she was not contracted for 5 seasons, and she was in season 2, but she ended up being in more episodes than she was originally intended to be in, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But she was not going to go on for 5 seasons. I'm going to talk about a few things that would classify as spoilers, so I'll put a timestamp to skip over these few little bits that will be relevant to the plot. But even the people I spoke to at Showtime, they said that they were surprised when they read the scripts for season 3 and Simone's character was killed off so quickly, because they were like, yeah, we just expected her to come back for a few episodes every season. What is super, super shocking is that Lauren Ambrose's character, who had again signed for 5 seasons, her character was also killed off in the end of season 3. And I do have a personal theory about what's going on there, and it does tie into casting, so we'll talk about that in just a second, because I need to tell you the backstory about the cast drama first. So I was told the overall main plan for the 5 seasons of the show, and this will make sense to people who watch Yellowjackets, well, it makes sense for what the show was doing in the beginning, was that the entire 5 seasons was supposed to build to a big confrontation between Shauna's character and Nat's character. And Shauna is the character played by Melanie Lynskey, and the adult Nat character was played by Juliette Lewis. That was what season 5 and everything was leading to, but that can't happen now because Juliette Lewis's character was killed off at the end of season 2, and that was allegedly 100% not supposed to happen. That has been something that definitely has been like rumored and talked about. Like, people have basically put the pieces together, and there has been a lot of rumors about that because it was such an out of nowhere thing. It just seemed like there was so much more to do with the character of Nat, and she very much is the heart of the show. And her character ended up being killed off because Juliette Lewis wanted to be killed off. She did not want to do the show anymore. She has spoken in interviews about being unhappy with where her character went, what happened with the show, and the Showtime people actually told me that they had to take questions out of the whole like some promos and some interviews and things, because when they would ask like each cast member, like say they're doing a promo or like an interview shoot, they'd say, oh, tell us about your audition process, or tell us about when you found out that, you know, you got the part. And they said they had to remove questions like that because Juliette would just start basically saying that she wasn't happy and she didn't like the character and things. The first couple of times she did it, there's interviews out there where you can see that.
Can I just say something?
Please.
Natalie was really depressing to play, and she's a de-evolution, so you sort of devolve. And I didn't know that. But every one of these people up here is so beyond talented, but the show's awesome. But my character is like, ugh.
And the whole thing with Juliette was she allegedly was late to set, and just whenever she obviously wasn't happy, like she just was creating a bit of a difficult environment. And as I briefly mentioned earlier, Christina Ricci is a very typical child actor, like type A, like on time, knows her lines, knows everyone else's lines. And so there was allegedly quite a clash between them. Now, if you look at their social media now, today, you'd be like, that doesn't seem true. And I mean, yes, anybody can be fake on social media and, you know, say, oh, this person's my best friend. And lots of Hollywood people do stuff like that. But that's not what they're doing today. What they're putting on social media is true. They are besties today, but they're besties now after the whole premise of the show has been ruined, because allegedly they had these issues. And it wasn't just like that was, you know, Juliette didn't want to be on the show, but there were major issues allegedly between them. And whenever they were shooting the season 2 finale, it was all the survivors had finally come together at Lottie's compound, and they ended up going out to dinner that night, like all the adult cast. And there's actually a picture on, I think it's on Tawny's social media, and Christina posted, so there's like a picture on Tawny's social media of like all of them together at dinner. And then there's a 2-person version of that picture with Christina and Juliette that Christina has posted for Juliette's birthday. And apparently this cast dinner, they all became like, they all talked it out and everybody cried and everybody became besties. And then now Christina and Juliette are obsessed with each other. And a couple of people were telling me that, you know, when they first went, I can't remember what exactly, it wasn't the premiere, it was some sort of promotional thing or something like after the second season finale, and Juliette Lewis was supposed to be there, but she ended up bailing like a few hours before. And whenever everybody was all, because, you know, there's like tons and tons of people at this thing, and they were all standing around, and Christina was like, oh, let's take a picture, and send it to Juliette. And everybody was like, don't they like have major issues? And someone else was like, oh no, wait till you hear they're all besties now that Juliette's leaving the show. And so that is apparently one of the major things that ended up happening. And with Simone Kessel's character, Lottie, apparently when they originally like wrote and had everything planned out for season 2, Lottie's character wasn't as significant and didn't have so much storyline. They had to implement and add all that stuff in because they had to add in killing off Juliette's character. And so like she was still supposed to have a compound and still supposed to have this cult and everything, but they had to change a lot of stuff to get the show to the season 2 finale, where all of the adults come to Lottie's compound and Juliette's character ends up being killed off. So my own personal theory about what's going on with the show, and this like ties into why they ended up killing off Van, Lauren Ambrose's character, even though she had this 5-season deal. I think that they were building the show Shauna versus Nat. I think that they've swapped out Nat's character for Ty's character, because if you watch the season 3 finale, in the teen timeline, there is this when they're doing like the hunt, and I'll put the scene in if for anybody who hasn't seen it.
Who was supposed to be the queen? I know you fucked with the draw. Do not fucking lie to me, Ty.
If you know it's good for you, you'll back up.
And there's like this moment where Shauna and Ty's character like have this tension.
I'm losing time. Get going.
That just seemed kind of a bit out of nowhere because Ty and Shauna have like never had issues before. And then in the adult timeline, Ty and Misty have a scene where they're basically like looks as though they're teaming up and going against Shauna. And to me, I think that has so like Ty is going to be the new Nat and it's going to be Shauna versus Ty, because what else could make Ty turn against Shauna? Shauna has done fucking everything horrendous. The only thing is Shauna being responsible for Van's death, and that has turned her against Shauna. Again, that's just my own personal theory, but I think that's a possibility. And it does also explain why within a year you kill off someone that you signed on for 5 seasons. Another person who got unanimous praise and everyone was saying it's just like a joy to deal with was Leisha Wood, who is someone that I really like too. So I was super happy to hear that. When it comes to the teens, it does seem as though they're kind of like the adults in that there's 2 groups of friends, because the adults, it's like Melanie Linsky and Simone Kessel are really close. Like they're both from New Zealand too. And Melanie was really the only person that Juliette like liked and stuff. If you remember that question and answer session in the first season.
Yeah, you do.
I just showed up. I did the best I could. It wasn't what I expected.
Where all of the Yellowjackets cast are on stage and Juliette basically like storms off the stage. It is towards the end, and there has been a lot of like back and forth on social media about whether like she meant to storm off stage or she thought it was over. And I was told no, she did storm off stage, and everybody afterwards was like, what the fuck? Why did she storm off stage? And apparently poor Melanie was like, will I go talk to her? Will I see if she's okay? Because they were like, oh my God, why did she storm off stage? So Melanie was the only person up until she became Christina Ricci's bestie that Juliette Lewis like really liked and got on with. And Lauren and Christina are closer. Not that like any of the 4 of them have issues. It's just like, you know, naturally you just become closer to certain people. And then with the teens, that is a bit more like cliquey kind of situation. But I think a lot of people can see that on social media. But one person that again got a lot of praise was Sophie Thatcher. Everyone was saying, you know, she's just someone who is very serious about being an actress. You know, she's good at her job, turns up on time, and she is extremely, extremely talented. I think that she's going to go on to be like a very, very big star. And quite honestly, pretty much everyone in this cast is a very, very talented. Yes, the adult actors have more like established careers, but the teen actors, I think that all of them really are standouts, and the cast is one of the biggest factors, in my opinion, that made this show such a success. And yeah, there's nothing but good things said about her. And then the 2 groups, I think most people who follow the show know the way, because like the way people post on social media and stuff like that. And Sophie and Elise and Courtney Eaton are more closer. And there's a couple of the teens that are dating too. The actress who plays Mel, Jenna Burgess, she's dating the actress that played Crystal in season 2. And then Kevin Alves, the actor who plays Travis, he's dating the actress who plays Mari, Alexa Barraras. Also forgot to say that Liv Hewinson was also someone that had a lot of praise, and a lot of people said really good things about them, that they're just someone who kind of floats between the group and gets on with everyone. So just wanted to mention that as well. One person that there was a lot of interesting stories about was Ella Purnell, who plays Jackie. she was a series regular in the first season, and then she returns in season 2 and 3 as like a guest appearance. Maybe if I do a Yellowjackets standalone video, I'll talk about some of the stories there. I know she's very popular, and she's in that series Fallout, and she's in the series Sweet Pea. So yeah, you know what these people are like. They're not the easiest people to deal with, but we'll get into those stories maybe I don't know, maybe they're for Patreon. One of the things that I found very interesting was around Hilary Swank's casting. And this is the same as what I was talking about with Dexter, where Showtime have this is their main thing with the franchising, is they just want to cast actors with name recognition and market the hell out of them, even though they have minimal screen time in the actual season. So Hilary Swank, if you don't watch Yellowjackets and you just saw the marketing, you would think she's in every episode and she's like one of the main characters. And she is in tiny amounts of the season, like one episode basically. And they didn't even film her stuff in Vancouver. They had to do like a whole special filming thing in California and all of that. And she actually wasn't the first, second, third, fourth choice for this role. The people that I spoke to said that she was very, very far down the list. And the reason that she ended up getting the part was because she was very persistent and wanted the role. And the whole thing was because like Melanie Lynskey, Christina Ricci, and Juliette Lewis are people that they got their blow up in the 90s and are big names, and the show, you know, has the 90s timeline. The executives at Showtime were very much like cast a big 90s star, and so they had like a list of people. Julia Stiles, who was in Dexter, she was on the list, but the main person that they wanted and that they really, really got close, and for a long time they were like, oh, she's in, was Kirsten Dunst. And I think that would have been cool, and she probably fits the role of Melissa a bit more. I don't know, it'd be really funny to see her with the hat, because the character that Hilary Swank ended up playing, it's like a joke that she was called Melissa Hat because the teen actress that played her in the second season, she's a very, very minor character. And, you know, a lot of characters like that, because there's, you know, it's a soccer team and there's quite a lot of them, they always have like a thing. And her thing was like, she always wears a backwards baseball cap and, you know, like very lesbian cliche. And in the adult timeline, when you first see Hilary Swank playing her, she has the backwards hat on. And yeah, that just would have been funny. But I think that would have been so cool to see Kirsten Dunst and Melanie Lynskey in those scenes. So let me know what you guys think. Do you think Kirsten Dunst would have been a better fit for the character, or Julia Stiles, or another 90s star? Is there someone else that you think would have played like a great Melissa? One thing that seems to be unanswered from this season is there were a couple of actors who it seemed like they had been cast on the show because they would talk about it on social media. They'd post things like wrap gifts. So they were in some way involved with the show. And a lot of people online had theories that, oh, like this actor looks like this teen on the show, they're going to play a new survivor that's going to be revealed. There hasn't been anything like that I've heard about when it comes to season 3, but I can fill in a blank for season 2 because there was someone who went to the premiere of season 2 that posted about can't wait to like reveal a Yellowjackets secret in season 2, and nothing ever came of it. And some people thought that this actress was going to appear in season 2, but she didn't. And that's because she is in the bonus episode that, according to people at Showtime, is never going to see the light of day. And so now we're going to talk about the bonus episode, and there is going to be information in it that talks about the symbol, talks about the cabin guy, the cabin in general. It is a bottle episode. I'm going to talk about some scenes that were deleted in season 2 that would have tied this episode in. But there's also some scenes in season 2 that they didn't delete that, what I'm going to say, will provide answers to what those were. So the bonus episode, like everything in this video that isn't being provided by the sources that I always put down below, all the videos and interviews and articles that I use to make the video, I always put it in the sources. But I obviously can't put the people I speak to in the sources. And usually my videos, yes, there's very rarely that I don't speak to at least like a few people about a show or actor or something I'm talking about in a video. But this video, I would say, is 75% speaking to people. And so with things like that, I'm obviously asking you to take my word and take these other people's words. And so for the bonus episode, this is very much, you can take my word or not. But when you get to the end of what I'm going to say, if you think that I could think this up in my head, like that's kind of a compliment because it's wild. So the bonus episode, for people who either don't watch Yellowjackets at all or people who are more casual fans of the show and didn't know about the bonus episode, basically Yellowjackets usually has 10 episodes a season, and in season 2 there was only 9 episodes. The showrunners then came out and said there was actually going to be 10 episodes, but one of the episodes was going to be a bottle episode, which means it's a self-contained story, and that this episode wouldn't air with the entire season. It would actually air between season 2 and 3. And there also was a lot of promotion during season 2 of Jason Ritter, who is Melanie Lynskey's husband, joining the cast. And because he wasn't in season 2 after it aired, people obviously put it together. As I mentioned earlier, there was 2 years between season 2 and 3 and season 1 and 2. So for those 2 years, people were asking, where is the bonus episode? In the beginning, like the first month or 2, there was a lot of talk about it, and then it went radio silent. No one from Showtime talked about it, none of the showrunners talked about it, and it just was kind of abandoned. Then when season 3 was finally announced and the air date was announced, then they finally said it's not going to air, which obviously most people had come to that conclusion after 2 years. Then obviously when all of the press and interviews started for season 3, the cast and the showrunners were asked about it a lot, and it was always very, very quickly given a sidesteppy kind of answer, and they swiftly moved on.
One thing that fans cannot seem to let go of is we just need that Jason Ritter episode of Yellowjackets.
Yes, don't talk about that episode.
We can never let you let it go. That Jason Ritter episode of Yellowjackets still remains to be seen. When are we going to get that?
I don't have a definitive answer for you.
Doesn't matter, like in the chronological order of this show, it would still make sense to give it to the fans?
Yes.
And that's all she's going to say. One word.
As I just mentioned, according to the people I spoke to at Showtime, they do not believe this episode will ever see the light of day. And that was due to the network executives not liking the episode in any way. And they were very firm on not putting it out at all. There was a lot of promotion done and even behind the scenes things put together for this episode. And there even was discussion down the road whenever they kind of had it shelved, but it wasn't like concrete shelved. And the Showtime departments were all talking about, oh, will we get Jason Ritter to do even more behind the scenes content? And then they ended up all being told, no, don't even go and ask him because we're pretty sure that this thing is never, ever going to come out. And so down the road, it was decided this is not happening in any way, shape, or form. There was also, I believe, discussion about putting it on like an extra or like an online thing only. But the executives were so firm on this episode, never being allowed out. And again, that's why I feel okay talking about it, because I've been told it's not coming out. So that's kind of the backstory on how the bonus episode didn't come to be. And now let's talk about what is actually in the bonus episode. The bonus episode, I think most people know, is about the whole backstory lore to the cabin that they're in for the first 2 seasons, and the cabin guy, which is the body that they find when they discover the cabin in season 1. And the cabin guy, a lot of people call him Cabin Daddy, appears in the season 1 finale as like a hallucination when Jackie is passing away. And when they discover the cabin guy in season 1, he's been passed away for a long, long time. And he's in the attic of the house in like a rocking chair. You just see his skeleton. And a lot of the characters are like, oh, it's spooky and haunted. And they do a seance and things like that. And the whole like premise of the show is that the girls, when they're out there, they create kind of like a cult religion around the wilderness. And a lot of, they're out there for 19 months and they're starving during the winter, and they're always talking about give the wilderness what it wants. And Lottie, the character, says that the wilderness wants blood, and you have to spill blood to get something in return from the wilderness. And this, I'm telling you this for a reason, because this all plays into the bonus episode. So the cabin daddy, the cabin guy, most people who know anything about the bonus episode know that he actually was played in the bonus episode by Jason Ritter, who is married to Melanie Lynskey. And in the same vein as I was saying earlier about how Melanie Lynskey got a lot of praise and everybody saying she's just as awesome as she comes across, everyone said the exact same about Jason Ritter and just how nice he is, like what a great guy, and just seems to absolutely adore his wife. And if anybody follows him on social media, I'm sure that stuff like that, I mean, it's very, very hard to fake, like very authentic things. Like he has this whole like beef with lesbians, especially on Twitter, because as I can attest, lesbians are obsessed with Melanie Lynskey. And so there's kind of like this ongoing joke beef between him and the lesbians, because he's always like, oh, the lesbians are trying to come for my wife. And there's like a little back and forth that he does. And yes, like so much stuff is easy for celebrities to fake on social media, and for them to in general just come across at either paid events or, if they're seeing someone for 5 seconds, it's very easy for them to fake that stuff. But in my opinion, something like Jason Ritter, even before I heard all this, when I saw that, I did think that probably is real, that he's a nice guy, because it just really has that authenticity that, again, is hard to imitate. There is one sole picture that exists from the bonus episode, and it's Jason Ritter with a baby. And I think this was like posted by accident. It was like the baby's parents posted it, and of course like people found it and shared it, and that was the only thing that people knew, that they assumed, because Jason Ritter has a jacket on that they found in the cabin, and the cabin daddy is also wearing it in like Jackie's hallucination. So people thought, oh, it must be about cabin daddy. And yes, it is. But there is also, I don't want to say cabin mommy, like cabin daddy's wife, and she is played in the bonus episode by Annabelle Wallis, who was someone who went to the season 2 premiere and had something on her Instagram that was like, oh, I have a Yellowjackets secret or something. So that's what that was. She was in season 2, the bonus episode. And the whole episode is basically Annabelle, I'm just going to call her Annabelle Wallis because I don't know what her name is. And Annabelle Wallis, or Annabelle, her character is an author. And so the couple, go to the cabin so that she can write her book. And she's writing her book while the cabin daddy is going out and hunting and providing for them. Also, the person I spoke to didn't actually see the episode. They read the whole script, but they haven't seen the physical episode. So she was saying that Annabelle's character was pregnant and had a baby while they're at the cabin and she's writing her book. And through the whole episode, she basically starts to like lose her mind, and the baby is like crying and crying a lot. And the episode in season 2, episode 6, where Shauna has her baby and it's stillborn, and at the end where she's saying, "Can't you hear him crying? Can you hear him crying?" That was all supposed to tie in to this bonus episode. And so over the course of the episode, Annabelle's character starts to like mentally deteriorate and she just starts to lose her mind. And they picked a good actress to play this part because it's very like dark and it gets darker, but Annabelle been in like a lot of horror movies and things like that. So at one point in the episode, well, quite early on, randomly, she starts to see this little girl. And this little girl is played by Brooklyn Prince from the Florida Project. And so she starts to see this little girl and she starts like coming to the cabin, and it's like, through the whole episode, you see this little girl like coming, and you're not really like the way that they leave like the wilderness up to the viewer to decide, is it supernatural? Is it all in their head? That is the premise with the little girl too. It's like, is this little girl real or is she in Annabelle's head? And the little girl was supposed to tie in big time to season 2. So, in the scene where Javi is out, Travis's brother, basically at the end of season 1 goes missing, and he's missing for like months and months and months. And then Ty and Van like randomly find him, and he's just like out there and fine. And then he had been, this sounds so crazy. He was living in this hole the underground, it had made heat through like a pocket because obviously it's like freezing and snowing. And one of the characters, Coach Ben, he ends up living down there for some of the season, the beginning of season 3. And when Van and Ty find Javi and bring him back to the cabin, basically he does all these drawings, and he draws where he was. There's like this hole in the ground, and there's a tree above it, like the roots of the tree is where you go underground. And when you enter the hole at the root of the tree, there is actually a cave system underneath, and that is where Javi was hiding. You do find out more about this in season 3 as another character goes and lives under there. And then at one point, the girls actually go under to try and get this other character out. And there's much more to do with that, but I will discuss that a little bit later. But for now, when Javi returns and he does this drawing, he has drawn like the roots into the ground. And if you look in the roots, you can see an outline of, it looks like a woman, but it's supposed to be this, well, maybe now I don't know what the figments of the imagination age, but this was the little girl.
She told me not to come back. Who did? My friend.
And I actually have videos on my original channel where I'm doing reviews of Yellowjackets, and I'm saying in the reviews, I'm like, that's a person, like that has to tie in some way, the girl. And this is it. This is what it was supposed to be. And so that queen card that they use to decide who dies whenever they're starving in the winter, I actually haven't mentioned this. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention it. There's a whole like cannibal element to the show because they're starving in winter, and they use this queen card to draw who is going to be like the sacrifice. And so when they first find the cabin, they find this deck of cards, and in the first season, Nat says, oh, there's no queens in that deck. And in the second season, when Javi comes back, there is like a whispered line. And I talked about it in my review, and I remember so many people were like, oh, I never would have heard that. And I didn't hear it because I have the subtitles on for everything. And it says, Javi, where'd you get this queen card? Akila says it. And the whole thing was Javi brought the queen card back from the little girl.
Hey, Javi, where'd you find that queen card?
And so the little girl over the whole episode, she's coming and Annabelle's like, who's this little girl? Where does she come from? She's starting to deteriorate mentally. And the little girl also in season 2, there's deleted scenes where you don't ever see her in season 2 of Yellowjackets, but there was supposed to be scenes with Javi's actor where you were supposed to see Javi throughout season 2 and see that he was alive, and they would not show you the little girl, but they'd show him like talking to someone, or they'd show like a hand, or you know, like the side of like a bit of hair or something like that. So that was all removed from the show. And I'm sure anyone who watches the show saying that triggered in their mind that at the end of the premiere of season 3, you see the new character that's living in the cave, Coach Ben. At the very end, you don't see him, but you hear him talking to someone in this cave. And so that what happens with Coach Ben is similar to what was supposed to happen with Javi that we were supposed to see throughout season 2, but it was all removed because they said, we're not airing this bonus episode. Oh, and the other thing that wasn't removed, I said before about the dripping, there was supposed to be like Cabin Daddy and his wife, like Cabin Daddy was supposed to be fixing this leak in the episode that would never get fixed. And that was the dripping that Mari hears in season 2. And so you get to the end of the episode and the whole thing, this is like very dark, but the baby is killed. Then Annabelle ends up taking her life. And then Cabin Daddy comes back and sees basically that his family's gone, and then he takes his. Hi, yes, it's me again. Just to be clear, the thing with the baby, it is kind of like left to people's interpretation. Like, was it sacrificed? Was it killed? And I mean, that's kind of the show in general. Like, there is no clear line of the wilderness, or is this just these people are really fucked up and this is their trauma, and or some sort of combination of the two. And I mean, the way that they ended this episode, it does kind of actually sound like maybe there never is going to be like a clear line about wilderness or trauma, but the situation with the baby and even just Annabelle herself, like what she's thinking and all of that, it never is like a clear cut thing in this episode. Apparently, like it is just very left up to the viewer to decide. And so the thing with the symbol, the person I spoke to, they said that there was nothing more about the symbol in this episode. It's not like explained like what it is, but they said that the little girl draws it, and that's like where it comes from. It's the little girl drawing it. So they don't tell you or like even explain or anything like, this is what the symbol means. This line means this and stuff. The little girl draws it, and it is supposed to be kind of where we are with the wilderness now, where it is left up to, is the little girl real? Is the wilderness real? Was this all in her head? Is this all in the Yellowjackets' head? And I also think like this is a very dark episode, but I mean, it is a show about people being cannibals. So I don't know. Let me know what you think, because it's interesting to say the least. And I'm very, very curious what they are going to do, because yes, like this is a bottle episode, but that's a hell of a lot of lore for the show, a hell of a lot of explanation that people have been asking about, like the cabin daddy, like where did the cabin come from? Like who lived here before? Where did the symbol come from? Where was Javi? How did he survive? Like what is the little girl in the tree and stuff? So I'm very curious, especially if you watch Yellowjackets. I'm super curious to hear what people think. Let me know about Yellowjackets, Shameless, Dexter, The L Word, any of your thoughts in the comments section. If you want to see standalone videos for any of those shows, let me know too, because there's a lot more where this came from. And I hope to actually start seeing more of you guys because I'm in the process of selling my business right now. So that will mean more videos, hopefully. Let me know if you made it to the end by leaving MVP below so I can thank you, because I really, really appreciate, especially if you make it to the end. I've left all of my social media, G's social media, the sources, and my Patreon, where we get into even more stuff like this, in the pinned comment and the description box. Thank you so, so, so much for watching. And as always, make sure to stay safe, take care of yourselves, and G and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye, guys.